All right, everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Martin's World podcast. Hope you're all doing good out there, guys. And before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to just remind you that if you want to support the show, support the fight for cannabis legalisation in Ireland, you can do so by signing up to the patreon.com/Martin's World, or you can also leave a donation in the form of Bitcoin and at the link found on martinsworld.ie. So guys, today's guest is none other than Jen Devlin from Wexford. Jen is just one of many people in Ireland currently suffering without effective access to cannabis. Cannabis helps to improve the quality of Jen's life as she suffers from severe and debilitating pain and stiffness associated with her multiple sclerosis and also ankylosing spondylosis, spondylitis, AS for short. But AS is a rare type of arthritis that causes pain and stiffness in your spine. It's a lifelong condition and usually starts in your lower back, and it can spread to your neck or damage joints and other parts of your body. Jen has been benefiting from using cannabis illegally, and since cannabis was allowed through ministerial licence in Ireland, Jen has fought to get an exemption, but her consultants will not put in an application for her as the hospital that the consultants works in has a policy of not prescribing cannabis for patients suffering with pain. Jen informed her specialist she was using it illegally, but still despite this they were unwilling to apply for her. Then on the 16th of April, Jen announced she was going to be holding a protest in Wexford along with the Wexford Cannabis Social Club, and the Gardai then the following day knocked at her door. It was two plainclothes detectives called to her door and they intimidated her. They basically threatened her with threats of fines and arrest if she was to go ahead with her protest, stating that it wasn't, even though it was a protest, it was still seen as a public gathering which would have resulted in her being criminalised or punished for holding it. Because of the COVID regulations. This is not true at all. Like the Gardaí are not allowed to call to people's homes and terrorise them at their front door and intimidate them out of holding a protest. This completely undermines our democracy. So I'm really thankful Jen came and shared her story with me, and I hope you guys enjoyed the chat. And if you'd like to get involved with Jen, you can sign up to our Fibro Warriors Facebook group. And you'll find a link of that there in the descriptions. So without further ado, guys, I give you Jen Devlin. Jen, welcome along to the Martin's World podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to get the opportunity to chat with you this morning. I hope you're well. You're below in Wexford in Ireland, and you're a chronic pain patient who's suffering from lack of access to cannabis in Ireland. So if you could tell me a little bit more about yourself and your condition, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no bother. Thanks so much for having me on. I have two chronic pain conditions, fibromyalgia and ankylosing spondylitis. I started experiencing symptoms 10 years ago during my first pregnancy, and it took a good few years to get a diagnosis of the fibromyalgia. And then a few years later, I was diagnosed with the ankylosing spondylitis. And both conditions cause chronic pain, amongst other symptoms as well. I suppose the ankylosing spondylitis is an autoimmune disease, and it's degenerative as well. So it can get progressively worse the older that I get.
Yeah, which is very important actually to mention that actually is that it's an autoimmune disease, and when we
Yeah,
look at cannabis and cannabinoids, you see the receptors, they're actually widely distributed amongst our actual the kind of immune system, um,
yeah,
and that's kind of seems to be where the most interaction is. It helps get that homeostasis, the balance right in the body, because autoimmune conditions, if people aren't aware, it's where the immune system starts attacking the body itself.
yeah.
Through misrepresentation, it thinks whatever's going on there, there's just misfiring of signals. And when you introduce cannabinoids into that, it seems to settle down that kind of chaos that's going on within the
Yeah.
body, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I used to have really high inflammation levels anytime I got blood tests, and they've come way down. Like,
Yeah,
so the evidence is there that it's working for me, which
yeah,
is the most frustrating part.
yeah. There you go, and that's another amazing. Again, more almost proven, I suppose, at this point, anti-inflammatory properties of the cannabinoids and cannabis
Yeah,
itself, the full spectrum extracts. This is the way
yeah.
in which to plant. So, for yourself, can I ask? How is it that you would choose to consume cannabis, and how does it best work for you?
Well, for me, I vape for breakthrough pain relief, which is really, really good, and it's quite instant as well if I'm in a lot of pain. But I'd also take cannabis oil, so that's full extract cannabis infused into coconut oil, and it's in a little capsule form. So I usually take 2 a night, and just before bed, like,
Mm.
and it knocks me out. I have a really good sleep, which I haven't had for years and years before I tried cannabis. And I wake in the morning feeling a lot better than what I would, my fatigue is greatly improved, I have a lot more energy.
Mhm.
I feel more refreshed in the morning. My anxiety is less, my depression is less. Before I started taking cannabis, it would have taken about 2 to 3 hours roughly, most mornings, just to get moving for the stiffness to ease. When
Yeah.
I'm taking cannabis, I literally can nearly get out of bed immediately and get dressed, which is something huge. Even just to a simple thing to be able to dress myself,
Yeah.
that's how much it helps me.
So vast
Um,
improvement in the quality of your life,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
suppose really it's not curing your conditions. Like, I suppose that the pain is still there, but it's just at a much
yeah,
more tolerable level. I think that's kind of what I
exactly.
hear repeated by patients, much like yourself. So you would agree with that, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
the pain is still there, but it's just like you said, a more manageable, more manageable
Of course, yeah.
environment.
Well, if you're going through
Sorry.
countless nights of lack of sleep because of your
Yeah,
condition, then that's going to lead to other issues, because sleep is probably one of the most important nutrients that we have to get in our
yeah,
body. And if you can't get that
exactly.
because of pain and restlessness, but
Yeah,
cannabis is helping that, then
yeah,
that's a reason. That a reason alone should be more than enough for somebody like
exactly.
yourself to be able to get
Yeah,
access to it. But you're
that's it.
excluded now currently because of the medical cannabis access program. Your condition isn't included in that, is it?
No, no, it's so restrictive. It only applies to 3 types of patients. So chronic pain patients have been completely forgotten about and ignored.
Yeah.
And I keep getting told that there's not evidence and not enough evidence that it works for chronic pain. There's plenty of evidence out there. And as I've said before, well, I'm evidence. I'm telling you, it's
Yeah.
working for me.
Yeah.
Like, why won't you listen?
And you're not
It's
alone in that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And there's so many patients. I run a support group, and I'm constantly getting contacted by patients all across Ireland asking how will they get access to cannabis, that they keep
Mhm.
asking their doctor, and the doctor is refusing to apply for a ministerial license. And even if you get to find a consultant that will apply for one, I think there's only a couple of patients that have chronic pain that got the ministerial license. I know one patient recently got one a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
and she has fibromyalgia, which was great news, but still not near enough as good as what it should be. And then the patient is left with the cost, so it's just ridiculous, the situation to have so many patients in.
Yeah. So that other person that they get access through the ministerial license, they didn't actually get
Yeah,
access under the medicinal cannabis
yeah,
access program,
yeah,
which is a
yeah,
joke in and of itself.
yeah,
And again,
yeah,
and you're with a particular hospital then, and I know there's another patient out there with a different hospital, but the
yeah,
hospitals then actually have a policy where they restrict the consultants from applying for access to it. So you
yeah.
experienced that yourself, is that right?
Yeah, I asked my pain specialist, it would have been about 2 years ago, about applying for a ministerial license. And I was told that it was against hospital policy to apply for a ministerial license for any chronic pain patient. I was like, how, like, what is so different with a chronic pain patient compared to any other patient? Why are we being left like this,
Yeah, it's
And
almost as if they're condoning you getting access through the black market, because I'd
yeah,
imagine
yeah,
you probably had said it to him. I've used
yeah,
cannabis and it's benefited me, and I would like to access
yeah.
it legally. Is kind of your request, wasn't it? I'd
Yeah,
imagine.
exactly. Yeah, and he even went as far to say that he recognized that it was helping, which he recognized that it's helping, but he's unwilling to apply for a license. I just can't get my head around it.
Yeah,
And
that
that
kind of
might,
flies in the face of the oath they take, isn't it? Like
yeah,
they at first do
yeah,
no harm. That Hippocratic oath.
yeah. But that's the thing; they have a duty of care to look after their patients, and they're not doing that. If I'm there telling them that this medicine is helping me, and they're refusing to even entertain the idea, I've even sat there with information for them and asked them to read it, and they've refused to take it off me. Like,
Yeah.
they're not even bothered to do any research. Like, that's,
Jeez.
it's just really, really hard. It's like banging your head against the wall every appointment that you go to. And my
Yeah.
last appointment would have been in January with my rheumatologist. and that was a little bit more positive than previous ones. She said she'd asked a senior rheumatologist about applying for a license, but she said she had asked numerous times and was told no, that while it was still illegal, they would not be applying. So we're just really just need legalization so patients can get access, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like the biggest barrier currently to patients is the Misuse of Drugs Act and the prohibition of cannabis. Like, as that's what's coming up time and time again. Doctors can't help prescribe it for patients because it's illegal, as they keep saying,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. Because while it's illegal, people like yourself are. Quite often are not relying either on criminal gangs or for maybe other people to be growing the cannabis and then putting themselves in harm's way, being
yeah,
targeted by the Gardai who are supposed to protect us. Quite often or not, they're probably taking the medicine away from patients. Like you're down in the Wexford direction, is that right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember reporting there not too long ago. There was, geez, quite a bit of cannabis was seized down there. Um,
yeah, there
I
was,
think there
yeah,
was somebody just driving by, got caught in their car or something like that. But again,
yeah.
like I'd imagine like quite a bit of that would have been destined for patients. Like, would you know how many people in the Wexford area, say even through your own support group, like would there be many of you in the Wexford area?
Yeah, yeah, loads and loads of patients. And like that, I remember I was waiting to get some cannabis to vape, and
Mhm.
the person that I was getting it off got busted. So then I was left with no medicine, like,
Ah,
you
no
know,
way.
so, yeah,
So that I would have been right so in saying that like before that any of these busts really coming up, there's a good chance that some of that cannabis is destined for patients much like yourself out there. And as you
yeah,
said, just in Wexford, which is a small enough county in Ireland, like it's and you've a lot of patients down there who need access to it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
spread that across the rest of Ireland. Then, like, how many? I'd love to know how many people are actually out there, like, suffering right
yeah.
now, or not even suffering, that are breaking the law, to be legally healed, if you will.
Yeah, and then it's as well as you had said before, like you're buying weed off criminal gangs, and you don't know how it's after been grown. You don't know what it's mixed with. You know, it's putting patients in such a vulnerable and dangerous situation. You
Yeah,
know, like it's. I know you're breaking the law, but it's even more than that. You're putting patients' lives at risk. Like, you know, and that's why you need safe, legal access.
100%. Would you have had any kind of encounters like that? I suppose getting any contaminated cannabis or cannabis that might have been CBD flowers. That's another problem I see out there. You've never been ripped off, I
Um,
suppose, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, no, thankfully I haven't been ripped
Good.
off. But when I first started vaping, I bought from someone that I didn't know,
Mhm,
and I was vaping it, and I just had a horrible, horrible experience. So it was obviously laced with something.
mhm.
I got like my heart was just racing, and I know that can happen with too much THC, but this was absolutely horrific experience. And yeah, I didn't go back to that person
Yeah,
again.
that,
But
that's
yeah, it's even trying to find a source that you can trust, you know. It's really, really frustrating.
and what way is the quality at times? Is it reliable?
No, no. Well, most of the time, no. And then you don't know what strain it is most of the time. So even if you find something that's helping, you don't know what strain it is. So, you know, it's frustrating. I remember once I got a really, really nice weed, and I was vaping, and it gave me so much relief. It was literally the best strain that I'd found.
Yeah.
But the person who had gotten it off didn't know what strain it was. And I was like, if I could find out what it is, because a lot of the time, if I'm vaping and I'm not getting that much relief, you know, so
Mhm.
it comes down to trying to find the right strain for you, you know.
Yeah, which is very important for patients, is consistency in our and the consistency in the medicine, like that it's the same. Because one strain could actually, as Alicia Maher kind of pointed out, some strains can actually exacerbate her pain, like
Yeah,
cause an
yeah,
increase in the pain. Um,
exactly. Yeah,
and that's something I know myself through my years of doing the herbal science, that there's hundreds of compounds in this plant. They work together in different ways in which we still can't really follow and track with science, but yet patients like yourself, what you're saying right now is kind of confirming that there's a much deeper complexity going on there as to the interaction of these compounds within the body, produce like where 1 + 1 = 3. It's like, where's this
Yeah,
extra one coming from? Like,
yeah,
it's something we can't get
exactly.
our heads around yet at the moment, synergy in these kind of
Yeah,
herbal medicines. But yet, what you're saying is backing it up there. It needs to be studied.
yeah,
And currently it's not,
exactly.
because you've doctors out there saying, oh, we can't even give it to patients because it's illegal.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
somebody like yourself, like you should be like not used, but you should be your what how you're benefiting should be tracked, and the
yeah,
strains and what you're benefiting from should be tracked. Then so we could say, all
yeah,
right, this terpene, these cannabinoids are all in this, and she benefited greatly from it. The next strain,
yeah,
well, these ones are missing now, and she didn't benefit from it. Well, there
exactly.
must be
Yeah,
relying on that. You see, through process of elimination, but we're not
yeah,
even doing this at the moment. Like as you just
yeah,
said, your doctor won't get it, give it to you, and you're getting it from criminals, and you're not even getting consistency. N-
exactly. Yeah,
like,
yeah,
when you say that, like the guy who you're getting it from doesn't know what strain it is, that tells me that obviously he's not
yeah,
growing it himself, so he must be buying it in from another source.
yeah, exactly.
Again,
Yeah,
like there's so much detachment there because you're getting it from a middleman. Like he could be getting
yeah,
it from another middleman. You don't know how many hands
exactly.
that's touched
Yeah,
before it's actually gotten to
yeah,
you. Then, so you're
exactly.
again as a patient, you're so much at risk here. And
Yeah,
I don't know, like I would love to see patients, more patients like yourself, maybe just take a legal case against this, because your rights are being violated. You're being left in a very
yeah,
unsafe situation, and you're being discriminated against because the substance in which is bringing you a much improved quality of life um,
yeah,
is being denied to you, and you're being forced to get it from criminals, as we just talked about there. It's I would love to see cases like that going before the
yeah.
courts. Like, would you think you'd ever be up for the challenge? It'll be a couple of
Uh,
years of a road to go. Like, but I think something like
yeah,
that would really scare the authorities. Like the
yeah,
actions. Like,
exactly. I think something like that is needed, and it'd be great if like a group of patients came together and were willing to do that, like go all the way to the European Court, and challenge the law. That'd be brilliant.
mhm,
It's just trying to find other patients that are willing to talk about it. That's why
yeah,
I decided to kind of start talking more about it, because until we all start talking about it, nothing's ever going to change. And there's so many patients in Ireland that are using it that haven't told anyone. I even was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago who said they'd love to be talking about it, but they were afraid that they'd lose their job if they went public. It's like, you shouldn't be up against that. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's just a plant, and it has so many benefits. I think the stigma around it, like we have come along a long way in the last few years, but there's still such a stigma around it. There really is. Like, it's okay to have a glass of wine in the evening, but it's wrong to have a vape. I can't get my head around how much stigma there is still associated with it. You
yeah,
know,
definitely. And the evidence behind making it illegal, it was never around the harms. It was around the social effects. Really, as somebody shared a kind of commentary from the Doyle, I think back in the 1970s or some point like that, when it was being made legal, they were debating it, and it was like, well, there's no real physical harms, but the social values of our society, they need to be protected from this drug. It's like,
oh
what
my
in the
God,
name of
it's
God?
crazy, isn't
It
it?
really is, because like if you look at the overall harms that are done, like patient like yourself now, you be sitting at home, you're just after picking up, say, your cannabis from your dealer, but like let's say you get followed home, and next you get a bang on
Yeah,
the door, like, and
yeah,
what's that going to
exactly.
do? Because are you at unease when you have cannabis in your home?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. An anxious wreck, yeah.
yeah.
I
So like
just
that's not good for
like,
the head, like the
yeah, exactly. It shouldn't have to live like this. I'm always thinking, what if the guards knock on the door? Especially now, when I'm talking about a public, but I haven't had any access for a few months, so they can knock on my door if they want. But when I do have access to it,
yeah.
that's how I'm living. The anxiety around it, and it's horrible to be left in that situation.
Jeez, yeah. And so you say you haven't have had access to cannabis in the last few months, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jeez, that's unfortunate. Sorry to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So my pain would be quite bad, and my stiffness. My partner is essentially become my carer again,
Yeah.
having to dress me and do everything in the house and look after the kids. So, yeah,
So
so
that's
I'm
the
full
difference
on.
between having cannabis and not, like, say, these
Yeah,
different things, like being able to stress yourself. Like, so many people will take that for granted, like, but when
yeah, yeah,
you can't do it
exactly.
because of your condition, it's like, and
Yeah,
then you have a plant that offers you an ability to do this again,
yeah,
and the
yeah, like,
authority's like, no, you better not use that plant.
yeah, exactly. Like essentially, I could be grown my own medicine, you know, and not have to be going to a criminal gang to
Yeah.
source it from, you know. That's what it comes down to. But I'm just so afraid to go down that route because I live in a council house as well. So I'm always wary that if I get a criminal record, I could lose the house, you know, and I've
Of
been
course.
at risk of homelessness before. I don't want to go back there, and I have 3 kids, you know. I'm not putting them in that situation, you know. So that's why I choose not to grow, but I wish I could grow, but I
Yeah.
can't at the minute, yeah.
So I'd imagine so because you don't have access to cannabis now, you're reliant on other medication that's prescribed to you from the doctors and that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now I don't really take painkillers that much because I don't find them very
Effective.
beneficial. But
Yeah.
I take them every now and again, but they don't really help. To be honest, they've never really helped.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And when
and
you
that,
access to cannabis, then would you be much less reliant then, I suppose, on them? Like if
oh yeah, yeah,
would I
yeah,
be wrong in saying when you have access to cannabis that you probably wouldn't need
yeah.
any,
No, I don't
if
take.
any at all?
Yeah, none at all, zero. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I
Because
had to
something
take
like
an antihistamine, all right. After years of being on biologic medication, which is immunosuppressants, I
mhm,
used to inject into my body for the ankylosing spondylitis. And the last one that I was on, I had 2 serious allergic reactions to,
Jesus.
and I developed another autoimmune condition called chronic spontaneous urticaria, where my body
Positive
thinks it's
treatment.
going, yeah, and my body thinks it's going into anaphylactic reaction. So I still have that now. It calms down a lot as well when I'm taking cannabis, but when I'm not taking cannabis, I need to take 2 antihistamines every day. So it even helps that, you know.
So, like, if cannabis was there day one as a
Mm,
front of the medicine cabinet tool for
yeah,
doctors to prescribe for patients, you probably would never have needed this like
yeah,
as what you're saying to me is an experimental treatment that they used on you.
yeah.
I can't imagine that being too approved, like to be. Uh,
Yeah, this is the thing. Like they're saying they don't know the dangers of cannabis, the dangers of these safe medicines that I've been prescribed, you know. Like on the information leaflet
Mhm.
on one of them was like heart failure, increased risk of cancer. The list goes on, even
Yep.
hallucination, which they're always saying about cannabis can cause hallucination. Well, there's plenty of medication that I've been on that can cause hallucination as well. Even a simple painkiller can cause hallucination, you know. So that argument doesn't stick at all. It really doesn't. There's so many horrible side effects, and I've been really unlucky, I suppose. I'm after getting so many different side effects from all the medication I was on. And I
Yeah.
can't say that I haven't tried because I've literally tried every option that they presented me. But now at my last visit, they were trying to throw the same medication that I was on before that didn't help or I reacted to. They were trying to re-prescribe it, and I was like, no way, I'm done. I can't put myself in that situation. It's too dangerous for me when I've had so many negative experiences, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just not willing to try anything else. Cannabis is my last resort, you know. So
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that cannabis has to be the last resort because, as I say, if it was the first
yeah,
thing that you got access to, and
exactly.
if it was in an effective way as well, you might have
Yeah,
ever needed all of these, and you could have been
yeah,
a contributor to society, I suppose,
yeah,
in that like you might have been able to actually not only just say dress yourself, but actually maybe go out and work a job in
yeah,
some capacity, like
exactly. Yeah.
because I'd imagine you probably can't work too many jobs. Like if you can't dress yourself, you
No,
be very
no,
restricted.
yeah. I've been out of work now for 7 or 8 years now.
Yeah,
And I was working full time when I got sick. And then I reduced my hours to part time because I couldn't work a full time week. And
yeah.
then I had to go out on sick leave, the worse I got while I was waiting on a diagnosis. And it was like a year later, I still couldn't go back to work. So they had to let me go. So I've been on disability now the last 6 years. But like that, if I could get access to cannabis, I'd love, like, I never wanted to be stuck at home. I want to be
Of
working.
course.
I
Yeah,
worked from the age of 14. I was really independent, you know, always on the go. At times I had 2 or 3 jobs, you know, and I'm gone from that to being stuck at home every day. It's not good for your mental health, you know. Now I'm a full-time carer for my youngest son, so I'm kept busy with that, but he's started school. So like even if I could get a job in the mornings, I'd absolutely love that. That'd be a brilliant thing to happen. But at the minute it's just not a chance,
Yeah.
and like you
This,
said, when you
this,
can't even dress yourself, you're not going to hold down a job.
yeah, no, but this is another prime example of how, like, this war on drugs, like these
Mm,
unintended victims, if you will, casualties of war. Like, it's much like yourself, but this is a cost to our society because
yeah,
not only are we carrying a lot of people, like how many people are on disability now that if maybe they
yeah,
had better access to cannabis, they might actually be able to come off disability, as you said, get
yeah,
that couple of hours in the morning, maybe even hold down a full time job when your kids grow up and
mm,
things like that, and not
exactly.
being reliant on the disability system. Um,
Yeah,
because, like, again, as you said, like, that's not where you want to be.
yeah,
Cannabis
exactly.
could possibly, if you have an effective access, help you out of that. It's like,
Yeah,
how much
yeah,
are we paying, like, every year? Not only to fight this failed war on drugs, but
yeah,
also to carry these victims of this war on drugs. Like, because that's what you are at the moment. You're a victim of this war on drugs. You're an
yeah,
unintended, you're a casualty of war, and
exactly. Yeah,
it's unacceptable. Like, it really, it just drives me mad when I think about this. Like,
yeah,
because people don't see this. Drugs are bad. Like, we
yeah,
keep it illegal because kids might get access to it. But, like, look at the
exactly. Yeah,
cost of keeping it illegal.
yeah,
Patients can't get access to it. Researchers can't get access to it. Or
yeah,
farmers can't even get effective access to it.
yeah.
I mean, it's just
It's
like,
crazy. It really doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
yeah, there's so many jobs can be made out of it, and everything. Like, I suppose it really undermines our democracy. This whole stigma of fear, because people can't even speak out against this. Then, because of fear of losing their jobs, fear of being
Yeah,
targeted by authorities. And I suppose on that note, like, you were hoping to hold a protest there on Tuesday yourself, yourself with the
yeah,
Wexford Cannabis Club below there.
yeah.
Um, but I suppose I know the story, but can you tell me about what happened after you put it up? And you only put it up on Facebook, if that's right.
Yeah, yeah. I set up a public event page, and I shared it across like a few Wexford groups and that. And on Saturday, I got a knock on the door, to local detectives, asked them to speak to me, and they said that they had heard that I was holding a protest, and that during COVID, that I would be breaching Regulation 10, and that if I went ahead with the protest, that they'd be in attendance at the protest and that I could be fined or arrested. Which I was just gobsmacked. I wasn't expecting them to be calling at the door. And at the end of the day, we were all going to be socially distanced and wear our masks. There
Yeah,
wasn't going to be that many of us. It's not as if it was a big, huge crowd of people or anything. We're not stupid. We would have followed guidelines. But I felt so intimidated that they took like two detectives to call to my house and tell me don't go ahead with this protest. But
jeez. Are
I
they
argued with
clothes
them,
or were
and
they uniforms?
no uniforms,
Oh,
no.
uniforms. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I explained to them how I was feeling about the laws around cannabis and that I was a patient trying to get access to it. And they said while they understood why I needed to protest, that they'd just advise me not to go ahead with it. So
Advised you.
yeah, advised.
Really? Kind of like
Yeah.
the government advised you not to use cannabis.
Exactly.
It's for your own good.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Like,
I
so,
just couldn't, I wasn't expecting it. Like I couldn't get my head around it. I was really caught off guard by a knock on the door with two
definitely.
detectives.
And I suppose you're lucky in one sense, like, that you didn't have access to cannabis, because if they knocked at your door and if you were in the
Yeah,
middle of medicating, like,
yeah,
alleviating your
exactly.
pain, they would have
Yeah,
entered your home, because if they smelled it, they use that
yeah,
against us, and that's very unfortunate. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was lucky in that way that I hadn't got access to it, but still, I just like I understand they were concerned about if it was going to be a big, huge protest or something.
yeah,
But like as I said to them, they've obviously never gone to a protest in Wexford, because when it comes to cannabis and protests, you're lucky to have 10 people attend.
yeah.
Like if you get 10 people, you're like, woohoo, you know. So it wasn't going to be large crowds, but they still weren't happy with that. They still advised me not to and told me to contact the station as well as they were leaving, but I didn't. I just cancelled it. Like morally, I wanted to go ahead with it because I
Mhm.
was like, well, no, you're not going to intimidate me. And I told them that I was still going ahead with it. But then after thinking about it, I was like, I don't need this. added stress. Like I'm going through enough at the minute. I'm not going to do this. I'll leave it off for a couple of months when things have eased, restrictions have eased. Then I'll organize it again. But just so frustrating that that's what you're up against.
Yeah, yeah, your voice was taken away that day. Although actually you had a great piece released. Maybe that's was it that Saturday or Sunday? I think was there a piece came out or Monday actually. I think even.
Tuesday it was,
Oh, was it
yeah,
Tuesday?
yeah. It
When you
wasn't
got
until
this one.
Tuesday, yeah.
Ah,
So,
excellent. At least you had
yeah,
your own process, I suppose, in the media anyway. Like you got your story out
yeah,
there, and your voice
yeah,
is still
yeah,
heard. But really, like that's such a bad thing to hear that the Gardaí, plainclothes detectives, probably on a nice old wage, not suffering from pain at all themselves, don't
yeah,
understand the needs there, and they're coming down intimidating you. While they
yeah,
say to
yeah,
sympathize with you, if they really sympathized with you, they would have been there
yeah,
supporting you and saying, hey, if you come
yeah.
down, we're going to have a couple of extra guards there and we're going to help you socially distance. We're going to help you
Exactly, yeah.
maintain this health safety guideline.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. Which I would have been glad of. I wouldn't have minded if they
Yeah.
had just called at the door and said, "Well, because of COVID, we're going to attend and make sure that crowd control and that everybody's distancing and wearing masks and that you're following guidelines." But we're not there to intimidate you or anything. That we're standing beside you. I wouldn't have had any issue. But to say that I'm going to be fined or arrested because of Regulation 10, just it really, really just
Very
shocked me,
threatening,
to be
like,
honest.
and to be trained in your own home by the people we
Mm,
call Gardaí Síochána, which is guardians
yeah,
of the peace. It's like
yeah,
they're terrorists currently. The people like ourselves who
yeah,
campaign for better access and the end of the discrimination because of this plant, the cannabis plant. Like
mm,
they really are the terrorists and paid for, sponsored by our government to go out there and target us and make us like I don't know, intimidate us away from this better
yeah,
quality of life that you're getting. For myself,
mm,
it was a better quality of life when I used
yeah,
cannabis. I didn't choose to enjoy it. I just was like, oh, this is actually allows me to think better. I was like, oh, this
yeah,
is I like this.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and it gave me a better quality of life, as I was saying. Like I wasn't suffering from any chronic pain, but I suppose
Yeah,
not being able to engage with your thoughts in any meaningful way was a painful
exactly.
thing for me to experience.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
mental
definitely.
torture.
Yeah, I think that's why it needs to be legalized, not just for medical, but for recreational as well. Like people should have a choice whether they want to use this plant or not. Just like people have a choice whether they want to use alcohol or not. I
Yeah.
just I don't really like the argument that okay, just for medical. I think it's medical and recreational. I'd be fighting for, full legalization.
Yeah, well, one of the best things about cannabis is its benefits as a prophylactic, as in a preventative medicine, which means it will basically help keep you healthy when it's
Yeah,
incorporated in as part of a healthy, active lifestyle.
yeah,
And not abused. Everything can be abused. You can abuse water, like you could drink too much water
yeah,
and drown yourself, like if you
exactly.
wanted to.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so everything has a potential to be abused. But when
Yeah,
incorporated and used properly in a nice, healthy, active lifestyle, man, we could be doing so much better as a society, and we could really
yeah,
lessen the burden on our health system. Because again, as I say, cannabis for many people helps maintain a healthy immune system.
mm,
Not just for people who have an unhealthy immune system, as in it attacks themselves, those autoimmune diseases, but people who just like who want to make like we do with supplements. That's kind of where cannabis would be as well, like as part of a nice, healthy, active daily regimen, maybe.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I suppose after that, did you have any worry then with the Gardaí, because you didn't put that up anywhere really in any great way. You shared it on Facebook. So do
Yeah, that
you
was
think
it.
the Gardaí are actually watching your Facebook profile down there in Wexford? Because well, I say
Yeah,
Wexford is a small county, like so the Gardaí probably don't have a whole lot to do down there right now.
yeah. That's what I started thinking. Like, how did they find out about it? Now, maybe it was a member of the public that seen the event or something and called them. I'd hope that they're not like watching my account and other people's accounts. You can't be intimidating activists like that. You just can't. But I'd wonder where they did get get their information from. But hopefully they're not watching my Facebook. But now, like, even when I did an article for the Wexford People on Tuesday, and I was really anxious that day after it was published, and I was thinking, God, what if the guards knock on my door now? I know I've no medicine here at the minute, but I'm like, they could knock on my door now any day, like, and it's horrible to live like that just because you've gone public about it, you know.
Yeah.
It's not fair on patients to be left in this situation at all.
Yeah. And have you ever been caught with cannabis before by Gardai or anything? You've no criminal
No,
convictions, nothing like that.
no, no,
Okay.
no,
So they
no,
don't have your name and address on file down there either. Like, so it's kind of
no,
yeah,
yeah,
it has a lot of questions there, a lot of worry for you as a person, like being targeted by
yeah,
Gardaí potentially, or
yeah,
maybe some member of the public now having a dislike against you, maybe starts reporting you, and who knows, like
exactly,
the next
yeah,
knock at the door could be guards with a warrant because the
yeah,
same member of the public made a false accusation of you, oh, you're
yeah.
growing cannabis, and the Gardaí will raid your house, like,
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've been fearing all week. Like, my anxiety's been really bad. But
yeah,
kind of yesterday, I just said, I've had enough of this. I'm not going to feel intimidated anymore. They raid the house, they raid the house.
yeah,
There's nothing here anyway that they're going to find. But it'd just be the ordeal of them being here and raiding the house. But I just said, I can't keep living in fear, you know. If they do, they do, you know. And
yeah.
at least if they do,
But you
you
choose not
know,
to grow cannabis because of
yeah,
out of fear, I suppose, really, isn't it?
yeah,
And
yeah,
because of that fear now, you say you're living the last 4 months without access to cannabis
yeah,
because of fear, intimidation by the same
yeah.
people who are supposed to protect you.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's crazy when you think about it. It really is, you know. Like, I'd have such a better quality of life if I was able to access it, you know.
Mhm.
Like, when I'm using cannabis, I feel like more myself. It's like when you're in constant chronic pain, and a lot of people can relate that are in chronic pain, you kind of grieve for your old self, you know, and it takes a toll on your mental health as well, because you're kind of thinking, oh, well, when I used to be able to do this and I used to be able to do that, you know. So it's tough going, thinking that if they just changed this law, I could have my life back. Essentially, that's the way
Mhm.
I look at it, you know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I used to suffer a little bit with my the sciatic nerve. I used to always kind of get
Mm,
that pain there up along the thing. And my
yeah,
buddy, he was in a bit of a small car crash, but he had like some trapped nerves on his spine as well. But like,
yeah,
when I used to get my sciatic pain, and it would be only temporary, it might last half hour or an hour, but jeez, it
yeah,
used to be. And I could be like doing anything, and next it would kick in, and I would have to just go away. And if somebody even looked at me wrong, I could
yeah,
lose the plot with them because the
yeah,
pain would just be at a level where it's like, oh my
yeah,
God, it'd be hard to breathe at sometimes. And my
yeah,
head would always go then to the people out there suffering with that constantly, like just
yeah.
on 24/7. I just be like, oh my God, that must be torturous. Like I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah,
And
I think because so many people have chronic pain, and it's usually more times out of it's an invisible illness that you have, so people don't realize the pain you're in. Like, even this week, so many people have contacted me saying, "Oh my God, I didn't realize you were living with that amount of pain." But like, you just put a face on and you get on with it and try and make the most of it. You know, you don't want to be moping around and be negative about it. You try to be as positive as you can, you know,
yes,
and then it comes, but the evening time, you're absolutely in bits. Like, and I'd be glued to the sofa, I wouldn't be able to move. It kind of, like you were saying about your breathing, when I'm in a full flare, I can't breathe. My ribs all inflamed, so it affects my breathing.
jeez,
Um, and I literally, there'd be days that I wouldn't be able to get up the stairs. I'm that bad with the pain, you know. And
yeah,
it's not fair either on my children to be seeing me like that when there's
worse,
a plant that could help, you know, and
yeah,
especially the stress then that it puts on the family as well. And my partner has essentially become my carer, and he's absolutely amazing and so supportive. I'd be lost without him, but still, he wouldn't have to be doing that if I could get access to the plant, you know.
and that would give you a better quality of life and allow you
Yeah,
to bloody dress yourself more and often.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's crazy. The current medications that you don't take, as you kind of say, well, you don't take often. Um,
yeah.
is that because of maybe unwanted side effects of them then?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, like, if you're taking a lot of painkillers, you can get constipated, and I have IBS as well, so that always flares up when I take painkillers. So I'm kind of reluctant to take it because you're taking it to treat something, but you always end up feeling something else because of it. So
Yeah.
like we're masking one thing but creating another problem.
Yeah.
So like there's times where I'd be literally lying on the sofa and my partner's like, you need to go to A&E. And I'm like, I don't want to get pumped full of drugs though, because I'm going to end up feeling worse then the next day, you know. So it's kind of a vicious circle, kind of cop and catch 22.
Yeah. And say in a situation like that, when you have access to cannabis, then how, like if you were to get a flare up, like how quickly or would the cannabis alleviate? How differently would it work from the medication you have?
Yeah, well, I suppose if I'm in a flare up, vaping is kind of the quickest treatment for relief. So when I vape, it's usually within a half an hour I'd get relief. So it's really, really quick, you know. So like I remember the last bad flare that I had while I was accessing cannabis would have been November, and I was glued to the sofa and I was actually thinking, will I go to A&E? And then I vaped, and within a half an hour I was up walking around. You know, that's the thing.
Wow.
Like it helps so much. The muscle pain, the stiffness, just everything. Like it's really just like, to be honest, I can't believe how well it works for me. I suppose until I tried it myself, I didn't think it was going to be this beneficial. But it really can give me back my life. So you know, I'm just going to keep on trying to raise awareness until all patients and everyone can get access.
Yeah, well, people like yourself, yeah, you definitely are at the heart of, are at the core of all my own actions, like, because I see the devastation caused by the lack of access to cannabis to so many people.
Yeah,
'Cause like yourself, I've been running a Facebook page there for years, the Cork Cannabis
yeah,
Club page. And I used to get messages every day, like nearly from
yeah,
people, and more used to be growing over the years when people like say
yeah,
Vera Toomey, Yvonne Callan, and other
yeah,
people out there were raising awareness as to the medical benefits.
yeah,
People would be messaging, "Oh, where can I get this? Where can I get that?
yeah,
Maybe the oil or the herb." And all
yeah,
I could ever tell people was the best thing you could do is grow it yourself and
yeah,
make your own oil, because otherwise
yeah,
you're at the risk of getting caught out by criminals. Like
exactly,
there was a
yeah,
very good documentary put together by Jeff Ditchfield, and he highlighted the scammers that were out there taking advantage of patients like
yeah,
yourself, selling them products like that would be said to be cannabis oil, but it would literally be just a bottle of olive oil, and they were
yeah,
paid
yeah,
like €1,200 or £1,200 it was actually for it.
exactly,
Crazy
yeah.
sums of money.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories as well. And as you were saying earlier, like people selling CBD bud and people buying it thinking that it's weed and not getting any relief from it, you know. So it's really frustrating. And like that, I've often gotten messages from people looking for it as well. And I always tell them the same thing, grow it yourself if you can, because you don't want to put yourself in that situation where you're dealing with criminals, you know.
And can I ask, Jen, well, what kind of support are you getting from any of your local elected representatives, councillors, RTDs? Is there many, if any, at all on your side fighting your case for you?
Yeah, well, there was one local councillor. He was actually going to attend a protest, so I
Right.
was really, really glad to hear that, George Lawler. And then another councillor contacted me to say that if he was working, if he hadn't been working, he would have attended as well, Thomas Ford. So that's Sinn Féin and Labour. But Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael never got back to me.
Yeah. Well, maybe it might be great for them to make up for the missed opportunity of holding that protest. Maybe
Yeah,
Mr. Euler will be able to get you up into the dial, so you can actually state your case yourself. Because
yeah,
I think the government really need to be seeing and hearing more from patients, because they're ignoring us way too much. Like you see
yeah,
Vera's fight there, and the hashtag Talk to Vera that goes around. She
yeah,
can't even get phone calls back off them. She's getting through to
yeah,
secretaries, and they're treating her like
yeah,
dirt. Like it's very
yeah,
unfair that the treatment you're receiving, and the lack of respect that the government is giving to you, like to be
yeah.
excluded from the medicinal cannabis access program, like that
Yeah,
must have been devastating when you heard that
yeah,
news, was it?
yeah, it really was. Yeah, I was so hopeful for so long. And then when I seen that chronic pain patients weren't going to be included in it, it really, I was heartbroken. And I suppose I went into a really bad state of depression for a couple of weeks after reading it, because I was thinking, oh, I'm finally going to be able to get access to medicine. And
Mhm.
then when I seen it, I was like, oh my God, what is this? You know, it's really, really frustrating. And as well, when talking about contacting politicians and that, I contacted Stephen Donnelly for the first time. I used to always email Simon Harris and never get anywhere, be passed back and forth, back and forth. But I hadn't actually contacted Stephen Donnelly. So I contacted him this week. And instead of his office dealing with it, it's been passed on to the Department of Health. So this is what keeps happening. You contact the Minister of Health, he passes it on to the Department of Health, and the Department of Health will pass it back to him, back and forward, and you never get anywhere. Like,
Hot
it's
potato.
ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't know how to reply. She's making too much sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. We're making too much sense for these people, so they just have to ignore us now at this point, because there's too many holes in their arguments against us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's so frustrating. And Stephen Donnelly, like our current health minister, was quoted in the media before as saying, like, he has no problem with a person growing their own cannabis for themselves. And he was referring to people recreationally.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, if, I don't know, we go to Stephen Donnelly's office and we start planting cannabis outside of his office or something, like, because he supported it once upon a
Yeah,
time, like,
exactly.
let's
Yeah,
turn him
yeah.
on his word, which he said actually when he got appointed to the role, that his views hasn't changed. He didn't say it's explicitly, like, as to that statement, but when
Yeah.
questioned about cannabis, he said that his views haven't changed since then. So
Yeah, yeah.
but he's
But
still
they
not
haven't changed, and why aren't patients getting access? It's just ridiculous.
yeah.
Laws
Party
need to
whip.
change.
Yeah. He has to toe the party line. Like, his views and opinions come second to the views and opinions of the party,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
it, isn't it?
unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah.
Really is. Jen, it's been great chatting with you. I understand you probably have things to do, get ready to collect kids and everything yourself. But before we sign off and things, is there any final messages that you would like to get out there? Is there anybody you would like to kind of call out? Maybe Stephen Donnelly or anybody?
Well, I suppose I'd hope that more and more patients will start talking about it openly and stop being so afraid to discuss it. Because I think if we all kind of start talking about it and stand together and put pressure on the government to change the laws, then things, change might come. But while we all stay quiet and, hide away, nothing's ever going to change. So I'd ask other patients to start talking about it, go public. I know you really don't want to put yourself in that situation, but we've no other choice. We deserve a better quality of life. So it needs to be done. It's a necessity at this stage. And I suppose I'd call on the Minister of Health as well to just listen to all the patients that are contacting them. Loads and loads of patients contact him every single week, and they're just being ignored. So for once, could he actually just sit down for an hour and listen to all the stories that are sitting in his inbox and have some compassion and some empathy and give these patients their lives back?
No, that's very well said, Jen. And you said you run a patient support group as well. Is there somewhere you would like for people to maybe
Yeah.
get involved with your stuff?
Yeah, I run Wexford Fibro Warriors. So you can find us on Facebook. We're a closed group. And we usually meet up twice a month. Now with COVID, we haven't been able to do any meetups, but when restrictions ease, we'll be back regularly meeting. And it's just a nice, safe place for people to talk and where everybody understands, so
Yeah.
it's nice to have somewhere to go to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And while it's called Wexford Fibro Warriors, I suppose it's not exclusive to the Wexford people, is it?
No, anyone can join. And also there's loads of people that have like autoimmune conditions, arthritis. Just even if you have chronic pain or chronic fatigue, you're more than welcome to join, because we completely understand. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'll keep on letting people know about your group and doing everything I can to help give patients like yourself better access to cannabis. So again, Jen, thanks very much for taking time out of your morning and come and speak with me here in Martin's World.
Thanks so much, Martin, and thanks for everything that you do. Really
No problem
appreciate
at
it.
all. And there you go, guys. Thanks again to Jen Devlin for taking the time out of her day to share her story and experience as to what it's like as a cannabis patient in Ireland. Shocking stuff there as to how the Gardai are being used to intimidate patients like herself, who are only trying to organise peaceful protests while following the health and safety guidelines that are in place. Our democracy is being undermined at the moment. in so many bloody ways. But people not being allowed to get access to medicine, and so many people being ignored, is just part of that. So guys, as Jen said, I hope this inspires more people to speak out and or stand up and speak out, because, you know, there's power in numbers, and Jen is kind of almost alone in a sense down there in Wexford. Like, I'd imagine if there was a larger group around her, she would feel a lot more secure. As she says in the interview, like, there's only often 10 to 20 people at most they get out for these kind of events, despite there actually being a much larger community out there of people who these laws affect and who should be out there supporting for this. So guys, thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this, and I hope you've been inspired to get active. So stay blazed out there, guys, and keep her lit. Much love. Peace.